crackled like a chorus of bones snapping underfoot, and I swear to you, right then, I should have known something was wrong. The woods were too quiet. No crickets, no owls, just the weight of the dark pressing in. But we were laughing, passing a bag of marshmallows between the four of us, me, Jake, Sarah, and Mia. We'd picked Pine Hollow Forest because Jake's cousin said it was proper creepy, and Mia had just rolled her eyes and said, "Ghost stories are for kids." Turns out none of us were laughing by sunrise. It started with the whispers. Not the kind you hear when the wind tangles in the leaves. These were words, slurred, like someone talking through a mouthful of mud. Sarah heard it first. She froze mid-sentence, her flashlight beam cutting across the trees. "Did you hear that?" We all shut up. Nothing. Jake joked it was her imagination, but then Mia's head snapped toward the tree line. "Run!" The voice hissed, clear as day. We laughed it off. Too loud, too shaky. Jake said it was probably campers messing with us, even though we hadn't seen another soul since the ranger station 10 miles back. Sarah pulled out her phone, no signal, battery dying, and Googled Pine Hollow disappearances. The screen's blue light hollowed out her face as she read aloud, "A hiker named Eli McCullough vanished here in 1987. Search teams found his tent ripped open from the inside. His journal had one entry. They're watching from the birch grove." Mia snorted. "They? Who's they?" "Bears?" But her hands were shaking. Around midnight, the cold hit. Not autumn in the woods cold. This was a deep, marrow-freezing chill that made our breath hang like ghosts. The fire dimmed, though nobody had touched it. The logs just grayed, like something sucked the heat right out. Jake tossed lighter fluid on it, but the flames sputtered and died. That's when we saw the shadow. Not a shape, a smudge darker than the dark, shifting between the trees. Sarah screamed. Mia grabbed her knife. The thing didn't move. It just watched. We bolted for the tents. Stupid. You don't run in the woods at night. Branches clawed at us, roots snagging our ankles like bony fingers. My heart was a jackhammer. I made it to my tent, zipped myself in, and prayed. The others were shouting, their voices fraying. Mia's tent was next to mine. I heard her hyperventilating, muttering, "It's not real, it's not." Then she stopped. A wet, gurgling sound. Something dragged across her tent canvas. Long, slow. Claws. I didn't move. Couldn't. The zipper of her tent peeled open. No footsteps. Just a low, wet wheezing. Then Mia's voice, but not hers, giggled. Come out," it sang. I clamped a hand over my mouth. The shadow seeped under my tent flap. It smelled like rot and copper. My muscles locked. The thing leaned down, its breath ice cold against my ear. "Found you." I don't remember running. Just the sting of branches whipping my face. The night swallowing Jake and Sarah's screams. I tripped over a root and face planted into dirt. When I looked up, I was in the birch grove. Pale trunks glowed in the moonlight, their black knots staring like eyes. And there he was, Eli McCullough, at least what was left of him. His skin was waxy, stretched tight over bones, lips peeled back in a grin. His eyes were all pupil. "They're here," he rasped, pointing behind me. They came on all fours. Gaunt, humanoid things with joints bending the wrong way. Their mouths were too wide, teeth needle sharp. I sprinted, Eli's laughter echoing as they gave chase. I don't know how I made it to the ranger station. My lungs were fire. I crashed through the door, sobbing, and the ranger grabbed his shotgun. He didn't ask questions, just said, "You're the third this month," and boarded up the windows. They never found the others. The cops said it was a bear attack, but the ranger knew. He told me Eli wasn't the first. The things in the birch grove, if they've been there longer than the trees, they hunger. And when you hear their whispers, it's already too late. I moved cities, changed my number, but last night I woke to a chill. My breath fogged, and on the window etched in frost were 3 words, "We miss you."
Story number 2.
The smell hit me first. Burnt sugar and wet charcoal, like a campfire doused in molasses. I should have listened to Ranger Simmons when he said Blackwood Gorge wasn't suitable for civilians. But my brother Kyle insisted it was just another urban legend, something to scare off tourists. "Ghosts don't exist," he'd said, tossing his backpack into the truck. "And even if they did, they'd hate your cooking." We laughed. We shouldn't have laughed. The gorge was beautiful in that jagged, hungry way. Towering pines leaned over the cliffs like they were peering into a grave. We set up camp near the old stone chimney, the last remnant of a homestead that burned down in the 20s. My sister Lana found the journal buried under rotted floorboards. Its leather cover was blistered, pages stuck together with something dark. "Don't," I said, but she peeled them apart anyway. The entry was dated October 31st, 1927. "They're coming up the ridge. Can't let them take the still. Lit the fuse, God forgive him. The rest was ash." Kyle shrugged. "Moonshiners." "So what? Probably blew himself up running from cops." But Lana's face went pale. She pointed to the chimney's base. Dozens of names were scratched into the stone, some fresh, others worn and smooth. One stood out, Jesse Blackwood, same last name as the gorge. Coincidence, he always said that. Night fell fast. No stars, just a sickly yellow moon. We roasted sausages, but the smoke curled weird, thick and oily, stinging our eyes. That's when we heard the boots. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Slow, deliberate, circling the camp. Lana grabbed my arm. "Who's there?" Kyle shouted. Silence, then a laugh, raspy and wet like the guy smoked a pack a day. In hell. Kyle charged into the trees with his flashlight. "Idiot." Lana and I followed, screaming his name. The beam caught something pale between the pines. A man. Or what used to be one. His overalls were charred, skin bubbling and blackened, lips burned off to show grinning teeth. Flames flickered in his eye sockets. Kyle froze. The thing raised a skeletal hand and the flashlight exploded. We ran blind. Branches tore at our clothes, the air reeking of kerosene. Lana tripped over a root and I dragged her up, her palms scraped bloody. The boots kept pace behind us. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Kyle shouted, "Split up," and veered left. I heard him scream minutes later, a raw, guttural sound cut short. Lana and I stumbled into a clearing. In the center stood a rusted moonshine still, its copper coils twisted like intestines. The ground was littered with bullet casings. And bones. Lana choked back a sob. "We have to go back." But the boots were closing in. The burnt man stepped into the moonlight, flesh dripping off his jaw. "You're trespassing," he croaked. His voice crackled like embers. Lana shoved me toward the trees. "Run!" She grabbed a rusted axe from the dirt and swung at him. I didn't look back. I heard the thunk of metal hitting bone, then her scream, cut off by a sound like a match struck in gasoline. I don't know how long I ran. The gorge narrowed into a ravine, walls slick with moss. The boots echoed behind me, closer every second. I spotted a crevice in the rock and wedged myself inside, breath held. The burnt man stopped inches away. His charred fingers brushed the stone, leaving smears of ash. He leaned down, his fiery eyes illuminating the crack. "Ain't no hiding from the flame," he whispered. The smell of burning hair filled my lungs. I kicked him in the face, felt his nose crumple like dead leaves. He reeled back, howling, and I bolted. The ravine opened up to a river. I plunged in, the icy water stealing my breath. When I crawled out on the other side, the boots were gone. Ranger Simmons found me at dawn, hypothermic and babbling. He didn't seem surprised. "Jesse Blackwood owned that still," he said, loading me into his truck. "Feds cornered him Halloween night 27. He blew the whole ridge to hell rather than surrender. They never found his body." He glanced at the gorge in the rear view. "Or the others. They called it a bear attack," said Kyle, and Lana were unlucky. But I know what I saw, and I know what's in the box Simmons gave me. Lana's necklace melted into a lump of glass. I moved to the city, changed my name, but last week I woke to the smell of burnt sugar. My kitchen wall was scorched, words seared into the paint. "You owe a debt." And on the windowsill, a single bullet casing, still warm.
Story number 3.
The water was still as black glass when we arrived at Crescent Lake, but I swear it blinked. Just a flicker, like something beneath the surface winking up at us. Tessa called me paranoid. "It's a lake, Maddie," she said, slinging her backpack onto the mossy shore. "Not a horror movie." But Josh lingered by the truck, staring at the tree line. "You sure this is the right spot?" he asked. The GPS had crapped out an hour ago, and the only sign we'd seen was a sun-bleached wooden post. Crescent Lake, 2 Miser. Carved beneath it, almost erased by weather, were the words, "Don't stay past dark." We should have listened. The locals in Mills Hollow had gone stiff when we mentioned camping here. The gas station clerk wouldn't make eye contact as he rang up our firewood. "Ain't no fish in that lake," he muttered, "just bones." Tessa laughed, but I noticed she didn't dip her toes in the water when we set up camp. Josh found the necklace at dusk. It was half buried in the mud near the shore, a tarnished silver locket, its chain snapped. He pried it open, revealing a tiny blurred photo of a woman in a high-collared dress. "Victorian?" he guessed. Tessa snatched it, dangling it like a prize. Maybe it's cursed, she joked, clasping it around her neck. The second the latch clicked, the temperature dropped. We all felt it. The air got thick, like breathing syrup. Josh's campfire spat embers at us, hissing as if the wood was green, though we'd gathered it bone dry. That's when the splashing started. Not fish, rhythmic, like someone treading water. Tessa aimed her flashlight at the lake. The beam barely pierced the gloom, but we saw the ripples fanning out from the center. "Hello?" Josh shouted. The splashing stopped. Midnight. The fire died again, despite Josh's curses and a whole can of lighter fluid. Tessa had gone quiet, fiddling with the locket. "Take it off," I said. She ignored me, her eyes glazed. That's when we heard the singing, a woman's voice, low and sweet, drifting across the water. Lay my bones, deep below the stones." Josh stood, trance-like, and walked toward the lake. "Dude, stop." I grabbed his arm, but he shook me off, his strength unnatural. The moonlight caught his face. His pupils were gone, just milky white orbs. Tessa followed, humming along with the song. I screamed their names, but they waded into the black water, clothes and all. The lake swallowed them to their waists, then their chests. Then, gone. I lunged for the water, but something yanked me back. A hand, a root. I fell hard, my ankle screaming. The singing stopped. The lake went still. "Tessa! Josh!" My voice bounced off the pines. No answer. I limped to the shore, shining my phone's feeble light. That's when I saw them. Pale shapes under the water that have just inches below the surface. Faces. Dozens. Mouths open in silent screams, hair fanning like seaweed. Josh's lifeless eyes stared up, his hand pressed against the underside of the water, as if the surface was solid. I ran, tripped over rocks, tore through thorns, following the distant glow of the truck's emergency lights. Behind me, the lake roared. Not waves, but voices. A chorus of wails. I fumbled with the keys, the engine screeching to life. In the rear view, a woman stood in the road. Soaking wet, hair plastered to her skull, the locket glowing at her throat. She smiled, her lips split with leeches. The truck hit 60 before I realized the headlights weren't working. The road was pitch black, but I didn't slow down. Not until the figure appeared again, right in front of the hood. I swerved. The tires caught air. Then nothing. I woke up in a hospital. Ranger Cole found my truck wrapped around a tree a mile from the lake. "You're lucky," he said, but his face said otherwise. He slid an evidence bag across the table. Tessa's locket, now crusted with lake mud. "This belongs to Eleanor Voss," he said. "Drowned herself here in 1892 after her husband killed their kids. They say she drags folks down to keep them company." He leaned in, lowering his voice. "But you already met her, didn't you?" They never found Josh or Tessa. The dive team quit after a week. "Too many bones down there," one said, "like a damn graveyard." I moved to the coast, changed my name, but the lake isn't done. Last night, I found my bathroom flooded, the mirror fogged with one word, "soon." And around my neck, a cold, familiar weight, the locket, chain intact.
Story number 4.
The highway ended at a rusted chain link fence, but Devin just grinned and revved his Jeep over it. "Ghost towns aren't on the map, genius," he said. I gripped the dashboard as we bounced through the Nevada desert, the skeletal frame of Silver Bend looming ahead. Abby snapped photos from the back seat. "My followers are gonna lose it," she breathed. None of us knew she'd be part of the story. The town was a cemetery of splintered wood and sun-bleached brick. The mine entrance yawned at the edge of Main Street, its timber supports sagging like rotten teeth. A sign hung crooked. "Whisper Caverns, keep out!" Abby brushed her fingers over the letters. "They called it that 'cause the dead miners' voices echo," she said. Devin rolled his eyes. "Cool. Let's whisper our way to viral fame." We should have turned back when we saw the dolls. Inside the mine's mouth, dozens of ragged cloth dolls hung from the ceiling on fishing line. Their button eyes gleamed in our headlamps, limbs swaying in a draft that shouldn't exist. Abby panned her camera. "Creepy," she whispered. The word bounced off the walls, folding into itself until it became a chorus. "Creepy, creepy, creepy." Devin froze. "Echoes," he said, too loud. The mine hissed back. "Echoes." The tunnel narrowed. The air turned greasy, sticking to our skin. Abby's camera died first, then our phones. Devin's watch spun backward. "Electromagnetic interference," he said, but his knuckles were white on his flashlight. That's when we found the shrine. A alcove crammed with children's shoes, tiny leather boots, lace-ups caked in red dust. A dollhouse-sized mining cart sat in the center, filled with teeth. Human teeth. Abby vomited. Devin picked up a molar. "They're old," he lied. A rock clattered behind us. We spun. The dolls hung there, but now their heads were tilted toward us. One's yarn mouth stretched into a smile. We ran deeper. Stupid. You don't go into the haunted mine. The tunnel opened into a cavern, its walls studded with pickaxe marks. A rusted cage elevator stood in the center, its pulleys squeaking. Engraved on the floor were names: Elias Hargrove, Martha Hargrove, Thomas Hargrove, 1902. Devon traced the letters. Whole family, he muttered. Abby's headlamp flickered. Guys, why is there fresh blood on the elevator? The scream tore through the dark. A child's voice, shrill and raw. Help me! Abby bolted toward the sound. Devon and I chased her down a side tunnel, our lights bouncing off quartz veins that glittered like eyes. The scream came again, closer. Please! We rounded a corner and found her. A girl, maybe 8, dressed in a patched pinafore, her blonde curls matted with dirt. She clutched a tin lantern, its flame blue. They're coming, she whimpered. Devon knelt. Who's coming, sweetheart? The girl raised her head. Her eyes were solid black. The hungry ones, she said, her voice suddenly deep, guttural. The lantern flared, shadows detached from the walls. Tall, emaciated figures with jaws unhinged like snakes. Their fingers scraped the stone, sparks flying. Abby screamed. The girl laughed, her skin sloughing off in gray flakes. You shouldn't have touched the teeth, she rasped. Devon shoved me. Go. We ran. The shadows didn't chase. They flowed, liquid and fast. Abby tripped. I turned back, but Devon yanked me forward. We can't, he screamed. Abby's shriek cut off with a wet crunch. The shadows surged over her, their mouths gaping. The elevator. The fucking elevator. Devon and I slammed the cage door as the shadows hit, their claws screeching against the bars. He pulled the lever. The gears groaned. We rose inch by inch, the things leaping, snapping at our boots. Devon's flashlight caught their faces. Not faces. Just holes. Endless holes. The cable snapped at 30 feet. We dropped. The cage shattered against the cavern floor. Pain exploded in my leg. Devon wasn't moving. The shadows pooled around him, tendrils slipping through the broken bars. A cold hand closed around my ankle. I grabbed a rusted pickaxe from the debris and swung. The shadow hissed, recoiling. I crawled. The girl stood at the tunnel mouth, her lantern illuminating a fissure in the wall. This way, she sang. I followed. Stupid. Always stupid. The crack led upward, the air stinking of sulfur. Dawn light bled through a hole ahead. I clawed my way out, collapsing on the desert sand. They found Devon's body in the elevator, his bones stripped clean. Abby's camera was recovered too. The footage shows us running, screaming, and then, at the 47-minute mark, a shadow leans into the lens and whispers, more. The town burned in 1902 after Elias Hargrove sealed his family in the mine to quiet the whispers. The dolls, the shoes, the cops called it a hoax, but I know better. Last night, I woke to the smell of sulfur. My bedroom wall was scratched raw, the words "feed them" gouged into the plaster. And under my pillow, a tiny leather boot, still warm.
Story number 5.
The road into Blackwater Swamp wasn't on any map. Just a gutted trail swallowed by cypress knees and hanging moss that brushed the roof of Grant's Jeep like skeletal fingers. Relax, he said, white-knuckling the wheel as we lurched through another pothole. My cousin camped here last summer. Beside me, Becca scrolled through her phone, the glow highlighting the sweat on her face. Last text he sent her was, "They're in the trees," she muttered. Then his phone went dead for a week. Grant laughed, but it cracked. We should have made him turn around. The locals called it the breathing woods. At dusk, you could hear it, a low, wet inhale rising from the bog like the swamp itself was alive. We pitched tents on the driest patch we could find, a tiny island of dirt surrounded by inky water. Javi, our resident skeptic, poked the mud with a stick. "Gators," he declared. "That's all the breathing is, like," but when he pulled the stick back, the end was coated in thick black sludge. It dripped like saliva. Night fell like a coffin lid. No stars, no moon, just the chorus of frogs that stopped the second we lit the fire. The silence was worse. Becca broke it. "Where's the cooler?" She'd packed it herself. Beer, hot dogs, a family-sized bag of chips. Gone. We searched the campsite, flashlights darting. Javi found it 50 yards into the trees, lid pried open. All the food was still there, except the raw hot dogs. Those were gone. "Raccoons," Javi said. Grant pointed to the mud. The prints weren't pawed. They were bare feet, long-toed, dragging something heavy between them. Becca vomited. That's when we heard the clang. Metal on metal, deep in the swamp. "Airboat," Grant whispered, but the sound came again. rhythmic like a hammer on rusted iron. Clang! 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 We huddled by the fire, passing a flask of cheap whiskey. Javi told bad jokes. No one laughed. Around 2 a.m., the water started bubbling. Not the gurgle of gators. This was a boil, the black sludge churning like 1,000 eels beneath the surface. Grant threw a rock. It floated. What the The fire went out. Not died. Went out, as if something clapped it between two massive hands. Becca's flashlight caught the eyes first. Dozens, glowing amber, waist high in the water. Xavi stood slow. Gators don't hunt in packs, he breathed. A branch snapped behind us. We turned. It stood 7 feet tall, its body a tangle of moss and rotted wood, limbs too long, joints bulging like tumors. Where its face should have been was a rusted metal cage, like an old crab trap, packed with wet leaves and squirming black beetles. It raised a hand, clawed iron, dripping sludge, and pointed at Javi. He ran. We all did. The thing didn't chase. It sank, dissolving into the swamp. Javi's scream came 5 seconds later. We found him knee-deep in muck, his legs trapped under a submerged logging chain. "Help," he begged. Grant waded in. The chain yanked. Javi disappeared so fast he left his shoes. The shack was Becca's idea. We'd passed it on the way in, a collapsed tin roof on stilts, half sunk into the bog. "Shelter," she panted. Inside reeked of mildew and burnt hair. The walls were covered in handprints, black ones. Grant shone his light on the floor. Dozens of iron hooks hung from the ceiling, each holding a rotting leather collar. Dog tags dangled. Buddy, Rex, Duke. Dates from the 1930s. "Dog fighting ring," Grant said. Becca picked up a rusted chain. "These aren't for dogs." The clang came again, closer. The shack's walls shook. Becca clutched my arm. "What is that thing?" Before I could answer, the hooks began to sway. The collars twisted, leather creaking, until all the tags faced the same direction, pointing at Becca. She dropped the chain. "We need to leave. Now." The swamp was awake. Shadows slithered through the water, hissing. The thing with the cage face waited on our island, Javi's body slung over its shoulder like a sack, his head lolled, mouth stuffed with mud and hot dogs. Grant screamed, charging with his pocket knife. The thing backhanded him into the water. He didn't surface. Becca and I fled in the jeep. The trail was gone. We fishtailed through the bog, headlights carving tunnels in the fog. The clang chased us, faster, louder. Becca sobbed. "It's in the trees." The cypress trunks blurred as we accelerated. Then the headlights died. The jeep plowed into a sinkhole. Becca's head cracked the windshield. I dragged her out, her pulse fluttering. The thing emerged from the mist. Xavi and Grant's bodies fused to its back with vines and rusted chains. It cocked its head, beetles spilling from its cage face. "Run," it gurgled, voice like mud in a drain. I left her. God help me, I left her. I heard her bones snap as I stumbled through the dark, the clang fading behind me. Dawn found me on Highway 90, caked in dried sludge. The cop said Becca's body was never found. Just the Jeep, its seats chewed to shreds, the radio stuck on a loop of muffled screams. The sheriff knew. "Old Man Rourke owned that shack," he said, lighting a cigarette with shaky hands. "Used to trap drifters in the 30s. Made him fight his dogs. Then something in the swamp took him. Folks say he feeds it trespassers to keep it quiet." He handed me an evidence bag. Inside was Becca's necklace. The chain melted into a perfect collar. I changed states, shaved my head. But last night I woke to the smell of rot. My bathroom mirror was smeared with black sludge, 2 words dripping down the glass, "Your turn." And on the floor, a single dog tag, warm to the touch. It reads, "Maddie."
Story number 6.
The wind smelled like snow, even though it was July. That's the first thing that felt wrong. The second was the silence. No birds, no squirrels, just the creak of pines swaying too hard for a breeze that didn't exist. "Altitude sickness," Liam said when I mentioned it. He adjusted his GoPro, framing the jagged peaks of the Wind River Range behind us. "It's messing with your head." But Kara kept glancing at the trail markers, their yellow paint scratched raw. "These are supposed to be closed," she muttered. We'd ignored the ranger's warning at the permit office. "Stay on marked trails. Do not approach the North Ridge." Too late now. The cabin wasn't on the map. Just a rotting log structure slumped between 2 boulders, its roof caved in. "Shelter," Liam crowed, already ducking inside. Kara hesitated. "Look at the doorframe." Carved into the wood were symbols, crude stick figures with antlers, their mouths open wide. Beneath them, words in faded paint. "The hungry one walks here," Liam snorted. Hippie graffiti, probably from the 70s. But the air got colder when he said it. We built a fire in the stone hearth. The wood was damp, but the flames caught too fast, burning blue at the edges. Kara's hands shook as she passed out protein bars. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. A low, rattling wheeze echoed outside, like someone dragging chains through dry leaves. Liam grabbed his hiking pole. "Bear," he said. "They're just—" The scream cut him off. Human, but wrong, too high, too desperate. It came from the tree line. Kara lunged for the door. "Someone's out there!" I grabbed her. "That wasn't human," I hissed. The scream came again, closer now, and beneath it, a wet clicking sound. Teeth. Liam shoved his GoPro into my hands. "Stay here." He marched into the dark, headlamp bobbing. Kara and I watched the footage live on the camera's screen. The beam swept over ferns, granite, then a figure, crouched, naked. Its skin was gray, stretched tight over jutting bones. The head turned slowly and the camera caught the face. Elongated jaw, eyes milky and sunken, patches of hair clinging to a scaly scalp. But the worst part was the smell. Even through the screen, I gagged. Rotten meat, freezer burn, spoiled milk. The thing opened its mouth, no tongue. Just blackened gums and a throat clicking with that same wet sound. Liam's headlamp wavered. What the thing moved. Not a leap, a shudder, like film skipping frames. 1 second it was 10 feet away, the next inches from the lens. Liam swung his pole. The camera toppled, showing boots, dirt, then static. We barred the door with a splintered table. Kara hyperventilated in the corner, clutching her emergency whistle. "It's not real," she chanted. "It's not." The fire died. Not a gradual fade. One moment flames, the next ash. The cold was a living thing, slithering up my legs, squeezing my lungs. Outside, the wheezing grew louder. Claws scraped the logs. Scritch! 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 Kara blew the whistle. The shrill blast should have shattered the silence. Instead, it sounded muffled, drowned out by a guttural laugh. The barricade splintered. A hand shot through the gap, skeletal, fingernails black and curled. Kara screamed. The door exploded inward. It stood hunched in the doorway, taller than before, antlers now jutting from its skull. Liam's GoPro hung around its neck, the red recording light blinking. Its head swiveled toward Kara, nostrils flaring. "Hungry," it rasped. She ran. I couldn't. The thing tilted its head, studying me. Up close, I saw the details. The human molars wedged between its claws, the patches of Liam's flannel shirt stuck to its chest with dried blood. It leaned in, its breath frosting my skin. "Run!" it whispered. I did. Kara's screams guided me, until they stopped. I tripped into a gully, my ankle snapping with a wet pop. The thing watched from the ridge, Liam's camera still glowing. It didn't follow. Just smiled, lips splitting to reveal jagged bone. Search and rescue found me at dawn. Hypothermic, babbling about the Antler Man. The ranger's face went grim. "Old mining families used to tell stories about a hiker who got lost up here in the 50s, he said, loading me into the helicopter. They found his journal. Last entry said he'd met the Hungry One. He glanced at the North Ridge. They never found him, though. Kara's body turned up a week later. Sort of. They identified her by dental records. The coroner said animals had rearranged her, but I know the truth. I saw the photos leaked online. Antler marks in the dirt around her remains. I moved to Florida, bought a condo near the beach, but last night I woke to the smell of freezer burn. My breath hung in the air despite the AC being off. And on the balcony, footprints in the frost, clawed, bare, and leading right to my door. On the floor, SD card. Liam's GoPro footage plays on loop. The last frame freezes on the thing's face, its cracked lips mouthing, "Found you."
Story number 7.
The highway stretched into nothing, heat ripples warping the horizon like a mirage. "It's not too late to turn back," I said, squinting at the cracked dashboard GPS. Recalculating, blinked in angry red. Tyler cranked the AC higher. "Relax, desert's empty. Perfect for stargazing." Empty, right. Then why were there fresh tire tracks leading off-road where no roads existed? We'd picked Devil's Playground, a salt flat in the Mojave dotted with Joshua trees that twisted like hanged men. Local legends called it a thin place where the veil between worlds frayed. Tyler called it TikTok Gold. His drone buzzed overhead, capturing our Jeep kicking up dust. Beside me, Nina traced the map. "There's a ghost town nearby," she said. "Goldfield, abandoned in the 20s after a cave-in." Tyler whooped, "Yes, we'll film there at sunset." The town was a corpse. Weathered clapboard buildings sagged under their own rot. A saloon sign creaked in the wind. "Golden Nugget now." Nina paused at the mine entrance, its timber beams splintered. They never recovered the bodies, she whispered. Tyler aimed his camera. Say something spooky. A rock clattered deep in the shaft, then another and another, a cascade like footsteps. Nina backed away. We shouldn't be here. We camped in the salt flat. The desert night was a black vault, stars sharp as shrapnel. Nina built a fire while Tyler reviewed footage. Check this out, he said, rewinding. The drone's camera showed the mine at dusk. Just as the sun dipped, a shadow darted across the frame. Too fast, too low. Human? Animal? Coyote, Tyler said. But when he zoomed in, the shadow had hands. Midnight. The cold was brutal, gnawing through our sleeping bags. I woke to the sound of picks striking stone. Clink, clink, clink. Nina sat bolt upright. They're digging, she breathed. Tyler grabbed his camera, fearless idiot, and marched toward the mine. We followed, flashlights trembling. The saloon doors swung open, no wind. Inside, the bar was intact. Dusty bottles, a piano missing keys. Tyler's light swept over a wall Polaroid. Dozens of miners, their faces blurred except one. A man in the back, staring straight into the lens. His eyes were black pits. Nina touched the photo. This wasn't here before. The piano slammed a discordant note. We ran. The mine loomed ahead, its mouth exhaling a sour metallic stench. Tyler's drone buzzed to life in his backpack. I didn't turn it on, he yelled. It shot upward, spotlight blazing, and dove into the shaft. We heard the crash, then laughter, guttural, wet, echoing up the tunnel. Nina froze. They're here. Shadows pooled at the mine entrance, stretching, rising. Figures emerged, skeletal, skin gray and flaking, pickaxes slung over shoulders. Their eyes glowed faintly like coals. The leader tilted his head, jaw unhinging with a sick pop. Shift's over, he rasped. Tyler screamed. They moved fast. Too fast. Tyler swung his tripod, smashing a miner's skull. It collapsed into ash. Two more took its place. Nina pulled me toward the jeep. Leave him, she cried. Tyler's camera light flared once, catching his face contorted in terror as they dragged him into the mine. The engine wouldn't start. Nina fumbled with the keys. Come on! The miners surrounded us, their picks scraping salt. The leader pressed a withered hand to Nina's window. Stay, he crooned. She stomped the gas. We fishtailed, hitting one. It disintegrated, its ashes swirling into a face in the rear view. Tyler's! We didn't stop until Barstow. The cops called it a prank gone wrong. Tyler's body was found a week later, deep in the mine. Coroner said dehydration. Bullshit. The live stream footage leaked anyway. 8 seconds of shaky cell video. Tyler in a cavern, surrounded by miners. Their picks rise. The screen goes black. Audio stays. Clinking, then a wet crunch. Nina moved to Maine, changed her name. I tried to forget. But last night, the taps ran brown. When I cupped the water, it pooled with gold flakes. And on the bathroom mirror, scrawled in silt, your shift starts now. Under my pillow, cold and heavy, a rusted pick head still damp with Tyler's blood.
Story number 8.
The dirt road into Hemlock Gorge was barely a road at all, just 2 ruts carved into the clay by decades of rain. Ellie's Subaru bottomed out twice before we parked at the trailhead. This is the spot, she said, holding up her phone. A Reddit post glowed on the screen. Secluded camping, untouched wilderness. The comments were a graveyard of deleted users. We should have noticed that. The forest was too green. Not lush, but saturated, like the trees had been dipped in poison. No birds, no bugs, just the crunch of dead ferns under our boots. Jamie, our resident Boy Scout, kept checking his compass. North is there, he said, pointing left. Then, 5 minutes later, no, there. The needle spun lazily. Magnetic anomaly, he mumbled. Ellie smirked. Or ghosts. We found the fire ring at dusk. A circle of charred stones hidden in a clearing. Inside, the ashes were still warm. Campers? I kicked a half-burnt log. Jamie bent down, pinching ash between his fingers. No one's been here in years. That's when we saw the carvings. Dozens of names etched into the surrounding trees. Megan, T.Y., Rachel, dates going back to the 70s. One trunk read, "Help them," in jagged letters. Ellie snapped a selfie with it. Graham's gonna love this. Night came hungry. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in minutes. Our fire spat embers that stung like bee bites. Jamie passed around a flask of peppermint schnapps. To keep warm, he said. It tasted like mouthwash and regret. Ellie scrolled through her phone. No signal. Big shock. She froze. Guys, my photos. We crowded around. Every picture she'd taken of the carvings was blurred except the faces in the trees. Dark smudges shaped like eyes. The first scream came at midnight, high-pitched, human, cut off mid-wail. Jamie grabbed his hatchet. Hiker in trouble, he said. Ellie clung to my arm. What if it's a trap? We followed the sound anyway. Stupid. Always stupid. The trail ended at a cliff. Below, a river churned black under the moon. On the edge stood a girl, maybe 16, barefoot, her nightgown fluttering. She turned, her face was a mess of bruises, one eye swollen shut. They're coming, she whispered. Jamie stepped toward her. Who's coming? The girl's mouth split into a grin too wide for her face. You are. She lunged. Jamie swung the hatchet. It passed through her like smoke. The girl dissolved into shadows that slithered into the trees. Ellie screamed. The forest screamed back. We ran. Branches lashed our faces, roots snagging our ankles. The fire was dead when we got back. Our tents slashed to ribbons. Jamie's sleeping bag oozed something thick and pungent. Bear? Ellie panted. A twig snapped. The girl stood at the edge of the clearing, her nightgown now caked in mud. Behind her, shapes emerged from the trees. Tall, faceless, their limbs too long. Jamie charged. Brave idiot. The girl caught his wrist, her fingers elongating into talons. Stay with us, she hissed. His arm cracked, bone jutting through skin. Ellie dragged me away as the shadows swallowed him whole. The river was our only escape. We slid down the cliff, rocks tearing our palms. The water was icy, pulling us under. Ellie's flashlight bobbed ahead. Maddie, hurry! Something grabbed my leg. Not a hand, a root, wiry and strong. I kicked, surfaced, gasped. The bank was close. Ellie didn't make it. The girl stood waist deep in the current, her hair fanning out like seaweed. She cupped Ellie's face. Shh, she cooed. Ellie's screams turned to bubbles. The water stilled. I crawled into a hollow log and prayed. Dawn came gray and silent. The forest looked normal again. Birds chirping, bugs buzzing, like it had been washed clean. The ranger found me curled on the trail, hypothermic. He didn't ask about Ellie or Jamie. Just said, "You're lucky," in a tone that meant you're not. Back at the station, he showed me a ledger. Names of hikers who'd vanished in Hemlock Gorge. The last entry, Evelyn McCready, 14. Missing June 12th, 1978. Nightgown found near river. I moved to Chicago, bought a studio with locks on every door. But last night, I woke to the smell of wet earth. My window was open, curtains dripping, and on the sill, a single fern frond, still green, arranged in the shape of a girl.
Story number 9.
The rain came down in needles, sharp enough to pierce our cheap Walmart ponchos. This is fine, Danny shouted over the downpour, his map disintegrating in his hands. We'd taken a wrong turn 3 miles back on the Appalachian Trail, lured by a faded sign, Burnt Hollow, Scenic Overlook. The overlook was a lie, just a sinkhole choked with dead hemlocks and the stink of wet charcoal. The cabin wasn't supposed to be there. A sagging shack with a caved-in porch, its logs blackened as if painted with tar. Lightning strike, Jenna said, prodding the door with her boot. It creaked open, revealing a single room, rotten floorboards, a stone hearth filled with ashes. Above the fireplace, a rusted forestry badge hung crooked. Ranger K. Hodge, 1957. Danny whooped. Free real estate. The rain turned to sleet by nightfall. We huddled by the fire, like passing a bottle of peach schnapps. Jenna found the journal under a floorboard. Its pages were brittle, the handwriting frantic. October 12th, 1957, they're burning again. I told the state, but they won't listen. The fire ain't natural. It moves. It watches. Last night, it took Billy. Danny tossed it into the flames. Crazy old coot. The journal didn't burn. Midnight. The wind died. The sleet stopped. The silence was worse. Jenna stood abruptly. Where's the axe? We'd propped it by the door. Gone. Danny checked outside. His flashlight beam lit up the axe, embedded in a tree 20 feet up. Bear? Jenna whispered. The tree groaned. The axe fell, handle splintering on impact. The smell hit next, thick, sweet, like pork left to rot in a smoker. Danny gagged. Something died out there. Jenna peered through a crack in the wall. No, something's alive. Her voice cracked. I looked. Between the trees, a figure stood silhouetted against the moon, too tall. Shoulders hunched, arms dangling past its knees. Its skin glistened black and mottled like bark coated in sap. Where its face should have been, embers glowed. Danny grabbed a poker from the hearth. Animal, he breathed. Just a freaking bear. The figure tilted its head. Bear. The word crackled, a campfire sparking to life. Jenna screamed. It moved like flame, sudden, hungry. 1 second across the clearing, the next at the window. Heat rolled off it, warping the air. The glass shattered. Danny lunged with the poker. It caught fire in his hands. He dropped it, screaming, palms blistered. The figure reached through the window. Its fingers smoldered as they brushed his cheek. Burn with me. Danny combusted. Not like in movies. Slow. His skin bubbled, split, peeled back like wrapping paper. He didn't scream, just melted. Jenna dragged me out the back door as his bones popped like kindling. The woods were alive. Trees bent toward us, branches snapping like bones. The thing followed, each step hissing against the wet earth. Jenna's flashlight died. We ran blind, the stench of burning hair guiding us. She tripped over a root, her ankle twisting. Go, she screamed. I didn't, couldn't. The thing loomed over her, embers flaring. Jenna's hair ignited first, then her clothes. She writhed, silent, her mouth a gaping hole. The thing watched. Purified, it sighed. I found the Ranger's truck at dawn, a rusted Ford F-100 half buried in ferns. The keys hung in the ignition. The engine coughed to life. In the rear view, the thing stood at the tree line, smoke curling from its joints. It raised a hand. Soon. The state troopers found me at a gas station, babbling about wildfires. They didn't believe me until they tested the truck's ash-covered seats. Human DNA, Jenna's, Danny's, and 14 others, dating back to 1957. Ranger Hodges' file was sealed, but I found a microfiche article, October 1957. Arsonist torches 10,000 acres. Body never found. A photo showed Hodges' badge, crisp and silver, the same one from the cabin. I moved to the coast, bought a boat. Salt air can't carry smoke, or so I thought. Last night I woke to heat, my bedroom wall blistered, paint curling into words, ember season. And on my pillow, a single forestry badge still hot enough to scar.